Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, founder and CEO at recruiting firm Riderflex. If you enjoyed today's guest interview, please give it a like and be sure to subscribe to the Riderflex podcast. And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Try the #1 marketing platform for small business. Everything you need from design to marketing to CRM. Learn more at marketing360.com. Marketing 360. Fuel your brand. Try the #1 marketing platform for small business. Everything you need from design to marketing to CRM. Learn more at marketing360.com. Marketing 360. Fuel your brand.
So tell me what's been going on with you, man, lately. We met at QuickBox. You were kind enough to let us do a search for you there. Riderflex did a search for you way back when we were first getting started. Gosh, we've placed like 2,000 people now. I think when we did work for QuickBox, I don't even know. It was probably like the first 20.
Early days. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know we met back then. But tell me what's been going on with Steven. Tell me, give me the update.
Well, there's certainly a transitional period. We'll call it that in my life. But first and foremost, I want to say, thank you for the work you guys did for us. It was incredible.
Yeah, no
and I really appreciate, the candidates you brought us. And I also appreciate the content that you provide on a very consistent basis. And I try to devour as much as I can. I'm just trying to keep up, but I really appreciate what you do. And I spent the first, 25 years of my life building brands. So I was more on the, consumer packaged good, health and wellness, building brands. And, when I took my last company public or previous branded company rather public, and then we merged with another public company and then exited. And it was sort of a serendipitous time of 4 other individuals that I knew from business had all just ended their latest venture as well. So we went out to dinner and actually just formulated this idea of building a third-party fulfillment center that catered to e-commerce companies. And, the timing couldn't have been any better.
Yes.
It just couldn't have been any better. So, and my partners were incredible. We all had a very specific skill set and we trusted each other implicitly, and we just didn't play in each other's sandbox. We just knew that when we had our weekly meeting, we were going to turn around and do what we said, and we come back next week and we will have done what we said we were going to do. And we trusted each other. And the timing of the market and the way we, differentiated the company in terms of how we manage clients and fulfillment and specialized on e-commerce. And it just we basically achieved our 5-year plan in about 2. So That's you met us kind of right in the middle there when we were transitioning from, hey, Steve, we need a really professional, experienced human resources person. And you helped us find that, right? That was the first sort of executives type search, because we were all, if you will, executives ourselves. And right. So that was the first position we needed to hire, be big believer in hiring your weaknesses. And so this was an area where we were weak. We had high turnover. We had, it's a entry-level position that requires a lot of work to bring people in, get them trained, and you have a high attrition. And so we needed someone with larger skill set. That was, one of the big first hires that we made at QuickBox. And so, we grew very rapidly. We ended up bringing in a private equity firm at the end of 2019. Yes.
Okay.
So we went through a transaction where there was a number of things that happened. So in between there was, we had built up to 3 different locations. So Denver was our headquarters. We had a second location in Atlanta, which was larger and had more capabilities than Denver to handle other types of businesses, like subscription boxes become very popular, where you might have like 3 million boxes that all have the same exact thing in them. Well, that requires a different setup than what we had in Denver. So a lot of robotics and machinery and things. And then we added a third facility up in Wayne, New Jersey. So that was to help us. Our strategic vision was to always, no pun intended here, but box in the United States. With QuickBox was you needed to be within at least, 2 days or less of 99% of the homes in America. And the reason is because Amazon really had set that bar for consumer expectation. Like, I want it now, but now really meant 2 days or less. So in order to achieve that, you have to have those geographic locations. So we brought in a private equity firm. We sold the company. We maintained ourselves as executives to help transition the company through that transaction. And then I was the CEO for 18 months. And then we did a search for a replacement CEO. And during that time, I had also looked at, really building out the rest of the company in terms of its ability to operate without being dependent upon me. Now, I certainly wasn't the end all, but a lot of entrepreneurs get themselves stuck in that place where they let so much of the company become dependent on them, and that makes them feel good. But then when you try to go through a transaction and sell the company, the buyers say, oh, well, you're the glue, so you can't leave, right? And you got to unwind all of that because you really don't want a business to ever be dependent upon one person. So we went through, we went through this transaction, and then that led to finding what I would call next level CEO. And we brought her in, Irene Sharmak, and she's incredible. She's very experienced in the logistics and fulfillment world. She just has a lot of tenacity. She's very commercial facing. She understands the value of relationships, which I was very big on. And then I've now transitioned into a board seat as an active board member on QuickBox. And then I think we'll get into a few other things, but just transitioning into some other parts of next chapter of life.
I mean, what a fast, scale up. Wow. To grow that quickly, to bring on a PE firm that fast, and then transition into another CEO in how many years? What was that? A total of how many?
Well, it was 0 to 100 million in 4.5 years. So it was a rocket ship ride.
Wow.
And then 18 months later, transition a new CEO in. So that's 5.5, 6 years there span, where again, we achieved in 2 years what we thought we were going to in 5. It just, the timing just, again, was just perfect. And I'd like to, thank you. And I'd like to think that we did a good job of servicing our clients, because otherwise they wouldn't have, came to us and been with us.
Exactly.
But the timing of just the growth of e-commerce and the value proposition that we had, I think really played suit to, where the market was headed. And it just happened a lot faster than we originally anticipated.
Did you have to raise cash to get it started, or you and your co-founders just bootstrapped it and no cash until the PE firm came?
It was completely bootstrapped. In fact, we originally, had put together, the business plan, and it was a very conscious look at how do we want to build this company from, a short term and a long term. And this was I still remember this offsite meeting we had with the 4 other founders, where we basically, in a very spirited way, debated our business strategy and the creation of it for a good day and a half in a boardroom, where a couple of them wanted to be very technology driven, and we're going to invest millions of dollars in technology. And we really came to this epiphany, if you will, inside the meeting, where we thought, there's only, when you look at strategy, it's kind of triangulated between, operational excellence and low price, and then, innovation. And so you have to pick one, and you have to just excel at it and build your strategy around that. And you can support it with a second, but you can't be all 3. And a lot of times, I find that small businesses, especially when they're starting up, they just skip that step, which is very, very critical step, is develop a clear and compelling strategy. In other words, how are you going to win, right? Because if you don't, I'd rather have a strategy that's wrong than not have a strategy at all. Right? Because you don't have a game plan. How are you going to win? How are you going to get people to believe in what you're doing? And how do you know what to execute against? And so, we spent a day and a half developing that. And it really came down to just not being very capital intensive. We needed the building, right? The one you came into in Denver, and we walked in, and I remember scratching my head thinking, how are we going to fill this thing? Right? Well, less than 12 months later, we were thinking, what's going to be our second building? Because it was filled very quickly. So, just it was, it was very deliberate in terms of not having to have capital to build the company. We even had a line of credit that we just never even tapped into. So, we also arranged our business model, Steve. Very importantly, part of our strategy was to be heavily cash flow positive. In other words, how we, developed terms with our suppliers versus terms with our clients, and how we had sort of cash to help kind of continue to fund the growth of the business. Because again, some of the things that entrepreneurs fall prey to is they don't realize that they want the growth, but they don't realize that with growth, that eats cash for breakfast, lunch, dinner, dessert, and everything else, right? You need dry powder to get that growth to continue to accelerate.
Yeah, totally. And let me ask you this: did the PE firm knock on your door because they saw you as an opportunity and they hunted you down, or because you were growing and going into those other states, you needed some cash and so you went after them? How did that work?
It was more deliberate on our part. It was
okay.
We really felt that we had built the company, to what we had originally envisioned. And we knew it was going to take next level capital, next level leadership, and sort of next level board and guidance to get it. Getting something from 0 to 1 million is one jaunt. 0 to 10 is another. 0 to 100, but that 100 to sort of that 250 million, it's next level. And all of us agreed that, for us, the fun part was the 0 to 100. Yeah. And we didn't have the, at least I can speak for myself, for me, the building part is the fun part. The next level, I think you can turn that over to somebody who's been there and done that before and can help do it a lot faster and probably more efficiently than I could.
Was it tough giving up control? I mean, I'm assuming you guys give up control of the quote cap table, so to speak, and that you're not, you don't have control of the board votes. I'm guessing at this point the PE firm does. By the way, can you tell us who that is, or is it private?
Yeah, no, they're Pike Street Capital. They're up in Seattle.
Okay.
Good group of guys who have a relatively large fund, and they like our space and have some other investments in this space.
Was that
there's
tough?
A lot of good synergies there.
Was that tough for you emotionally to give up control?
I will say, for me, no, because I've been through this before a couple of times. So now the first time, if I was to go back to my first time, I would say it was very difficult because I thought I get to sell it, but I still get to call the shots. Well, no, you don't. You're not the owner anymore. Somebody else calls the shots. You have a boss now. And being an entrepreneur my entire life, at least my entire professional life, that's a very difficult thing, is to all of a sudden have a boss. And so for this one, no, I knew what came along with it. Okay. I knew that, after you do a transaction, there's always that honeymoon period, and then that wears off, and then you get into the brass tacks. And but as long as you have a good partner, that transition can be more palatable. I've been on both sides. I've had really bad partners who afterwards said, "Hey, remember all that stuff we talked about? We're not going to do it. This is what we're going to do." And I thought, "Oh my God, who did I go in business with?" And then these gentlemen that we partnered with, they've been very supportive of the growth of the business, and so it wasn't as difficult. I think maybe for some of the other founders, this was their first transaction. I think it was probably a little more difficult for them. But again, I can't speak for them, but I know that first time you go through it, it is a little bit troubling to give up the reins and not be the one who has to, who's calling the shots, so to speak.
Yeah, totally. So now you still have equity in the company, and are they moving to flip it, or you think they'll take it public and then there's another big payday for Steven and the original founders? What do you think?
So we certainly did retain some rollover equity. They have a pretty long time horizon. So if you look at your partners, and this is just something that took me time to learn, is different levels of and ranges of capital sources, that normally aligns with their objectives and time horizon. So typical private equity firm could be 3 to 5 years. Some can be 5 to 10 years. They tend to take a longer approach in their time horizon. So it's not a quick, press the accelerator, make it grow at all costs and then flip it. They tend to really try to maximize the full benefits of the enterprise value and spend time doing that, and then potentially sell to maybe a larger strategic player or whatever that may look like. I don't think, at least historically, I don't think they've taken any companies public, so I don't think that's on the horizon.
Okay. And what about Steven now? Are you semi-retired? Did you make enough cash on this deal that it's kind of chill? Or you what's next? What are you starting next?
Yeah, well, I didn't have to, but I did this speech lecture to DU, University of Denver graduate class, and it was on the importance of entrepreneurship and just choosing a path that's more likely to be successful and make you happy, which I think sometimes we forget that last part, which is
you got that right,
and be happy, and when I looked back at my goals and I always look at entrepreneurship, and I suggested, especially the young entrepreneurs, to first ask themselves the question, what do you want to be? And that question is usually framed with, do you want to be famous? Do you want to be wealthy? Do you want to be an operator, or do you want to be legendary? And there's no wrong answer. It's just, what do you want to be? It's good to know the why behind where you're headed in a very personal way. And you can be, one can lead to another, but you usually need to pick a lane. And there's good examples for all of them. I mean, you look at somebody, one of the greatest operators that we've probably ever known in our lifetime, would be Warren Buffett. Now, you might look at him and say, well, his goal was probably to be wealthy. I would argue his goal was to be a great operator at what he did. And he still does it today. He loves it. Now,
Yes.
He's extremely wealthy and he'll be legendary. And, but my guess is he probably started it because he wanted to be an operator and stay an operator at what he does. And he loves it. And so there's no wrong answer there. And then underneath that is, what are your personal goals for this? And when I say that, I mean, I'm a big believer in the SMART goals. And this is the one place though, where I'd say you get a hall pass here because it's so personal. It's whatever you want it to be, not what your parents wanted for you, not what your kids might want for you, but what do you want it to be, right? So when I look back at these goals I had as a very early entrepreneur, it was always to love what I do, right? To wake up every day and feel like I'm really enthusiastic about what I'm doing. That doesn't mean there's not hard days where you just like, I just want this day to end and stressful, but it just means, relatively speaking, when you wake up on Monday, you're not dreading the week. You're enthusiastic about what's being presented to you, whether they're opportunities or problems that you can turn into opportunities, which I call propertunities, by the way. So it's just, do you love what you do? Because the day you stop really truly loving what you do, you need to stop doing that, or find a different way to do it, or find different people to be around you, or whatever it may be that is keeping you from loving what you do. And also, as cheesy as it sounds, I truly am a big believer that if you do love what you are doing, it doesn't feel like work. You just get into it and you love it and you enjoy it. And then the second thing was, I always had this number in my head, and I don't know where it came from, but it was always to just build a $100 million company. And I came close a couple times, but I didn't get it. And then I finally got it with this last one. And it just felt like this huge accomplishment. Was like,
that's great.
I did it, not a $1 billion unicorn. It wasn't. And again, it's personal. It's what you want it to be. Right. And then it was, to have an exit or exits or whatever, to create, freedom to have opportunities to do what I choose to do with my time. And, thankfully, through my professional career, I've been able to achieve those. But again, it's also something that's very, important to that exercise and critical, is that you and each person understands that those goals are yours and they're personal. They don't need to be time stamped. They don't need to be, action oriented. It doesn't need to have all the rules. It just needs to be, what do you want to try to achieve? Because it's your measuring stick. Everybody has a different, it can't just be, one thing. I think it sometimes encompasses several things. So, setting out to do that, and putting myself in that position, it's now given me the opportunity to just I needed to take a break.
I'm sure.
It'd been, a good solid 25 years of go of working around the clock. And, as an entrepreneur and a business owner, it's not a 9 to 5. When you leave the four walls or, wherever people are working now, as an entrepreneur and a business owner, it goes with you. It's on your shoulders. It's in your head. It goes to the dinner table with you. It goes to bed with you. You dream about it. You wake up to it. It doesn't go away. And I think sometimes people who don't own their own business, fail to realize that how stressful that can be, and how you work with it from a positive stress or a negative stress is critically important. And through, all those years of being an operator, and then with this last business, the growth was very rapid. And then, you throw COVID in there, which then for us, Steve, was a double-edged sword. It was on one side, our business volume of our clients 4x, like literally overnight. Remember when March 13th, when that in-home shelter went in place, it was like March 14th. It was like, you don't have 30,000 orders today to process. You have 120,000. It was like, boom. And so how do you do that? I mean, we were just barely keeping the wheels on the bus. We were working 365 days, 24 hours a day, around the clock. And we were blessed by that. But again, do keep in mind, we just got lucky, purely lucky. We were, no, hold on. We were on the right side of the coin for the businesses that it affected positively. Because I know plenty of people who are on the other side of the coin, neighbors included, who had to sell their house because they went out of business, right? And so when people would ask me during COVID, how's your business doing? I hated answering that question. Because I almost felt guilty that we just got lucky on the right side of the coin. It landed on our side. And we were able to take advantage of it. So I really played it down. But through that process, though, of COVID, the wear and tear, it really played a toll on my health. And I liken it to, I always think of, Steve, when you look at a president, when they get elected and they just think of like Obama, they look young and chipper going into the White House. And then 4 years later, they look like they're 20 years older. Yeah. That's what I felt like. I just felt like, oh dear God, the toll of this has been just, and I know a lot of people felt this. So I'm not complaining or making myself try to feel special here. It's just, I had to pay attention to what it was doing to me, because it was turning me into somebody I didn't like. It was things were happening mentally that I had never had before. And I certainly felt like I couldn't control. And I felt just an overwhelming amount of anxiety and really depression from it. And I know that's hard when you think of, well, wait, things are going well. How does that happen? And I'm the eternal optimist. So for me to even accept this was extremely difficult. And a big part of my decision in the end to really create some finality to me transitioning out was I needed to take care of myself. Yeah. I desperately needed to take, I'm not one to throw in the towel, Steve, but I didn't know if I was going to make it mentally through just much longer. I needed some time to take care of myself, because I've always had this philosophy of, if I can't take care of myself, I can't take care of anything or anyone else around me.
That's right.
So
what about your family? What about your family? Do you have family? Are you married, kids?
Yeah. So I've got a beautiful family. We wonderful wife who I love dearly and is just a big part of my life, and hopefully I'm hers. And we've got 6 beautiful kids. So we've got age ranges from 30, just got married, gonna have our first grandbaby, down to one that just turned 16 this week. and or last week, and is going to be driving. So, there was, just making sure that they were okay too. I mean,
Right.
we watched,
Yes.
one of our daughters not be able to have her wedding that was scheduled, right? We watched one of our daughters lose her senior year because no prom, no graduation, and
Ooh.
making sure they were okay, right? And just like everyone else going through this in their own way, I think what it caused a lot of us to do was really become more introspective in terms of our own lives. Just how do I take care of myself through this so that I can take care of my family, and then I can take care of other things, which included the business. But the business wasn't number one. It was me, and then my family, and then the other things. And so that was a huge transitional period for me. And then stepping away was a bit of a relief, because it gave me time to focus on me and my family, which we did. And then I've started to slowly, like you said, just trying to produce some content, because now my philosophy has changed to, this is my opportunity to give back.
Yes.
And so in a very, very small way, in a very trite way, I would say, is just some of my content is just getting some of the wisdom out of my head, doing some, some I'll call it guidance consulting. It's just kind of helping some people through their careers. And then, being a board member and on some other boards as well.
You're on some other boards. So that keeps you busy. Okay. Are you going to, do you want to start something else, or are you going to wait 12 months and you're going to take the rest of this year off and then see? Or
I'm not going to be an operator again. That's not going to happen.
Okay.
I do, I went back to school to get my master's.
Cool.
So working on that now. The means to the end there, one is I've always been a student of life and a student of business. And, I kind of feared, Steve, when I walked back in there, I was like, well, what am I going to learn? I feel like I've kind of done a lot. I will say,
I started the company, took it to 100 million. I'm not sure what you guys can teach me, but okay. I'll come to class.
I will tell you with a straight face, I am learning something new every day when I step foot in that class, because the world is changing rapidly. DU does a great job of progressively staying at the forefront of what management and leadership and business looks like and acts like. And I'm learning something. And to be honest with you, I think maybe I wasn't paying as much attention when I was in undergrad school as I should have been, and probably let a few things slide by. But also I think it has more context now. So when we're going through it, I can think to myself, okay, I know this, I've been through that, but learning new things at the same time. But my means to the end here really is I'm going to be teaching at the university level. So I'll be an adjunct professor. They already started me on that track at DU. So I will be teaching in their entrepreneurial studies program. And again, just my way of, there's so, when I was, young budding entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it, I loved to learn, right? I knew I was never the smartest guy in the room or around. And so I had this incestual need to read a lot, because I felt like I could sort of outlearn in some ways. Others, I also had this I felt like I could outwork other people if I worked harder and around the clock, those that were maybe smarter. But one of the critical parts of just my business maturation was mentorship. Just, I had some great mentors. I mean, they were older individuals who just, Steve, they had so much wisdom in their head, and I just knew it, and I just wanted to extract it, because it was real life experience. And there's nothing that's as important as that. And so, I got a lot out of mentors. I still do. I still have a CEO coach. I go meet him for lunch, and we're now friends. When I don't pay him, but we, I had a coach, you look at Tom Brady, he had a coach till, all the way through his 22 years. I mean, the best get better because they still have coaches. And so, I kept my CEO coach, and we're friends, and we,
that's great.
We went and had lunch the other day, but I still, sorry, my cat just jumped
That's
up
all
here and
right,
missed
man.
the
No worry. Yeah,
yard.
it's all good.
And so I still learn things, and I still go to lunch with a little bit of an agenda of, hey, I'm kind of having this trouble with this thing, and can you kind of walk me through some of your wisdom? And so I think teaching will allow me that opportunity to just take some of that wisdom here and give it back to
I
those
love that.
budding
I love that.
entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I love it. So it sounds like you'll do some teaching. You might do some investing, but you're not going to be the operator. You're going to sit on a few boards, maybe something like. Does that sound right? That's the future.
Yeah. And I've wanted to never say never, right? So, in looking at what's out there and seeing what's going on, but right now I'm just really very content and fulfilled with what I'm doing, and which is
Okay.
probably doesn't seem like much, but
No, it
between
does.
that and the a lot of personal stuff that I've been working on, it has certainly filled my days. But I think as I start to move forward, I'll find a few more things to
Is your
occupy
wife
my mind.
is your wife at home, or does what's she do?
She works, she's been with her company for, I think 22, 23 years.
Okay.
They're based in Texas, but she works remote.
Oh, so you
she's
guys
able
are
to-
trapped. You guys are trapped in the house together. Is she like, hey, get the hell out
Yeah.
of here? You're getting on my nerves.
We have two separate offices. Yeah. It's, sometimes we have to shut the doors in between us because we both talk so loud during the day, but I'm a pacer. I typically, when I get on conference calls or conference meetings, I put my AirPods in, but I like to walk around the house or walk outside. But I love to walk and talk. It's hard for me to just kind of sit in one place and do my thing all day. But because my phone has been one of my greatest assets and weapons in business, is just lots of conversations on the phone.
You're a native to Colorado, aren't you? You grew up here.
Pretty close. I was actually born. My dad was in the Marines, in the military, so I was born in Camp Lejeune, in North Carolina, on a military base, and then we moved all over until we settled in Colorado when I was 5.
Okay.
And then
pretty much.
Yeah. So
yeah.
But natives. You are not allowed to say you're native unless you are a true native. But I'm as close as you can get. Yeah.
What about your wife?
Texan through and through. It's
did you meet her at CU, or where did you guys meet?
We both were on a business trip. We met actually in another state through some mutual friends. We just kind of became friends first, and then, developed our relationship, but it was a long distance relationship. So, it was a bit of a challenge there. And, for me, I had the business here, and it was, I really, remote working just wasn't really as much of a thing as it certainly is now. So we made the decision, and she, was gracious enough to move from Texas to Colorado.
Sounds like a blended family. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you said you had a 30-year-old. So I'm guessing there were some kids and marriages in there before.
Yes. So we both, had failed at our prior marriages. And I think, just like anything in life, you learn a great deal from the failures. It's hard to learn from your successes. You do, but you just don't see it as wisely as you do when you fail. And so, I think we were able to take that and really use that to benefit us in a relationship, and really structure things a little differently. And the challenge, of course, with blended is the kids, and the acceptance of one another, the acceptance of new parents, acceptance of a new blended family. And that's certainly, not without its challenges, and,
of course,
difficult to really, work your way through that. But we've done an incredible job of just being partners through this, and making sure that we're, aligned, and that, we're parenting our kids, to be the best people that they possibly can. And how kids are, it's just, they're kind of wired to be the way they're going to be. And as parents, you think you got to control everything, but you really can't. And
you really can't.
Nature's going to have its way with them, and you're going to nurture them as much as possible and guide them to be good people and have good hearts. And for us, part of that was having Christ in their heart, and just understanding, how to be a good person with kindness and compassion, and making as best choices as they're going to make, and knowing that we just can't control every move. And I
That's
think,
key. Yep.
from what we've seen and in our kids, we've done I would have to say, a pretty incredible job. I mean, they're turning out to be great people and good human beings. And, the people that, we have one that just got married and another one that just got engaged last week. And
That's great.
he came over and asked for her hand in marriage. And that's the way he was raised. And we thought it was great. And we couldn't have asked for a better kid. So we kind of see how it's progressing, and we certainly couldn't be happier for them. And hopefully some small part of that was the way in which we parented them.
You took on two of the most challenging things that you can do as a human being. Number one, be an entrepreneur, and number two, go through a divorce and then get remarried with a blended family and be a stepfather. I mean, those are not easy things.
Yes, I would agree. And I think, I could be wrong. And, divorce is one of those things that, I don't think anybody goes into a marriage with like a plan B, right? You don't just assume
right.
It's going to fail. And so when it does, it's especially for men, I found, in talking through that, it feels like a great failure. And it's difficult to accept. And during that time, what it also did was it really took my eye off the ball in running the business. And it just, because emotionally you're drained. It's excruciating. And my business went through a very hard time. And frankly, I will never forget the conversation. I had my bank came in, and there's a banker up in Boulder, and I won't say his name because I think some of your listeners may know him. And he's a pretty popular guy around Colorado. He sat across the table from me and he said, "Stephen, banks don't like to be equity partners, and you've kind of made us an equity partner. In other words, you've lost so much money that you're in trouble. We're going to have to call your line of credit." Ooh. And our line of credit at the time was about $2.5 million. Well, it wasn't about, it was fully maxed. And I had no idea. And he said, "You got a week to take care of this." And I mean, Steve, I'm not one to throw in the towel, but I will tell you, I watched my life just sort of flash before my eyes in that moment, and thinking, how am I going to do this? And the next day I had a CEO group that I belonged to. They're called Vistage, and they have CEO peer groups, and you probably heard of them. Yep. Great group that I had. It was about 13 CEOs. And I went in there. We had this morning check-in, right? You went around the room, did a quick check-in. How you doing? How you doing? How you doing? And they got to me, and how you doing? I'm doing good. We went to move to the next guy, and our moderator, Mickey Fain, he said, "Stephen, hold on a second. You're not good." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, he could feel it and see it on me. And he's like, "You're not good. What's going on?" And boy, oh boy, I had a full on just breakdown. I just lost it. I was just crying because I thought, this is it. Like my bank line's been called. I'm going to have to file bankruptcy. I'm probably personally going to have to file bankruptcy. I'm going through a divorce. Like, how much worse could this all be? And
were you already, by the way, can I just ask from a specific perspective, were you already out of the house? Were you like living in a little apartment away from your kids? Like that kind of painful stuff?
Yeah. I mean, interesting you should ask that. I was actually living in my office. So when my kids would stay with me, I'd rent a hotel for a day or two, and then they would stay with me at a nearby. They thought it was a blast. They still think that was some of the most fun times they had, was sleep over in Dad's office. But it was to say, it was tough, and it was really, really tough. And, I'll never forget the person next to me. I had my head down in my arm. I didn't want to pick my head up. I was just crying. And the guy next to me, we kind of went through a lot of, there was a lot of questioning and answering, and it was a very good support group in there. And his name is Greg Greenwood, and he was sitting next to me, and he put his hand on my back, and he slid this little piece of paper across, and he said, "Stephen, I want you to call this guy." I was exactly where you were 5 years ago, and he helped me get through it. And I think he can do the same thing for you. And I remember grabbing that piece of paper, and I didn't feel like a whole lot of relief from that. It was just sort of like, well, that was nice of him. And, if I trust Greg. So we went through our session that day. They were once a month, all day session. I was on my way home. I got home and, or rather to the office, walking up, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to call this guy. So I called him. His name is Terry Schreier. He actually resides up in Boulder. Okay. And he said, well, why don't you come up to my office tomorrow and let's talk about it. So I thought, okay, what do I have to lose? And, there's a lot at stake here. I certainly, need to hear this guy out. So we spent a couple hours talking, mostly him asking me questions. And he looked at me and he said, Steven, you're not going to file bankruptcy. You have a great business and you're a great leader. You just need to change a few things in your company. And we're actually going to go raise you capital to grow your business. And I mean, you want to talk about like a life altering point in the trajectory of where you're headed. That one moment changed everything because he came in, he helped me make some very tough decisions. We turned our receivables. We had some pretty large customers like Walmart and GNC and
which company was this? Can you share that?
This was in the very early days of Isatori brand, and we had some pretty big customers at the time. Okay. And so we were able to take those receivables and factor them where they pay you in advance, take a pretty large chunk out of it. Yeah. Yes. Much like what I would think heroin would be like. It was extremely hard to get off of once you get on it, because it just was like you needed that influx of cash all the time, and they gave it to you. But in a very
they also micromanaged it and called and said, "Why'd you order toilet paper this week?" Stuff like that.
It was, but the point being here is he helped us get through that. He helped us do a workout with the loan, so it wasn't just an immediate payback. It was a payback plan through installments.
Because the bank's calling you every week checking in too.
Oh, they wanted to basically, and I really didn't have a lot of assets. It wasn't worth them seizing my inventory. It's not like they could sell my inventory.
Okay.
So we worked through it.
What was the line of I'm sorry, what was the line of credit on if there was no inventory? What was the lien against?
Well, no, we had inventory, but it wasn't inventory they could necessarily sell. It was finished good labeled product inventory. A bank could take it, but they're going to get pennies on the dollar. So we and then at the same time we actually had great timing on a new product launch we had just put together. We put a minimal budget behind it, but it just took off. And we ended up building the company very successfully over the next 18 months. And then we ended up putting a plan together to go raise capital. And we ended up taking the company public. So in 2012, we took the company public. I know it just went from completely insolvent to raising an ungodly amount of money by going public to really help propel the company, and it's just in those moments, right, where and I always tell my kids, you never know what's going to happen from a relationship, from a person you meet. You just never know.
That's right.
And I in that same CEO group, I stayed in that group for a while because it was a great group, very supportive. And oftentimes, and this, see, when you're at the top and you're an entrepreneur and you're a business owner, you don't get a lot of attaboys. You don't get a lot of peers to hang around with and go, good job. Right? No. I mean, you're the one giving the good jobs, but
that's right.
You need that. It's important. And that CEO group was very, very important for me. And we went off site one time in a retreat, and we did this great exercise where we had to go off on our own. And they gave us like these large sheets of like a graphing paper, if you will. So you had this Y and this X-axis, and on the X-axis was just time, just whatever you wanted the time to be as far back as you could think to now. And then the Y-axis was the highs and lows in your life, whatever scale you wanted, whatever your low was, whatever your high was. And you had to go back through time and you had to plot your lowest points and your highest points in life. And just briefly just write, like, what was it?
Okay.
Right? And then you had to come back into class in the team, and you had to just walk everybody through your graph. And it was there was a lot of crying that went on in that room.
Oh,
There was
I
a lot
bet.
of people reliving some very tragic moments and some great, like a gentleman, his wife died of cancer, and it was an extremely low point in his life. So there was a lot to take in this. But what I found most interesting about this exercise, and I would encourage anyone to do this exercise, is when you step back from your graph, what you saw, and what I saw in everybody's graphs, were three things. One, after every low point came a high point. After
Yes.
every low point came a high point. And the second thing that was most interesting was the high points always tended to get higher in whatever was happening in life.
Interesting.
Chronologically.
Okay.
And then the third thing was, and I think we've come to know this, the older we get, we realize this: life doesn't work in a linear line like we think it does.
No.
When we get out of college, we're like, I'm going this direction, right? And what we learn is it just goes like this.
Yes.
But if you step back, what you saw was, if you put a line through it, it would go like this. Even though it had these lows and highs, it was moving in an upward direction.
As long as you're hustling. Yeah.
And I thought it was, yes, correct. And there's a little bit of luck in there at times. I think there's just, certainly you may have had the opportunity, you're in the right place, but a little bit of luck, but also you're willing to put in the work. And I loved that exercise, because I think when you just step back and everybody stepped back and looked at it, it felt, I think for the most part, very gratifying. Yes. It was like, look at my life. It's okay. Like, when you put it all in perspective, it's been a great journey so far. And
if you could call your 21-year-old self coming out of CU, you could probably write a book for him, right? But if you could tell him a couple of things really quickly on a quick 5-minute phone call, what would you say to him?
Oh boy. I think just what I said, it's not linear. Trust me, it's not going to be linear. There's going to be lots of highs that you're going to enjoy, and there's going to be lows along the way that you're not going to enjoy, but you're going to learn a lot from those lows. That's certainly where I've learned the most. Being down, is where you really do learn what you're made of. You really do learn who your friends are and aren't. The ones that stick around and support you versus the ones that were only there because things were going well. And that, I think, is very interesting and eye-opening in of itself. I would say as well that it would, behoove me not to say, just keep doing what you love no matter what. You're going to be confronted with things that, challenge that notion that you have to love what you do, but and when I say love, it's finding happiness and fulfillment within what you're doing. And I know this sounds funny, but the last thing is stay out of jail.
Have you ever been arrested, by the way?
I have once. I was young. I was a teenager. I did something really stupid. And I think the lesson was, you're going to spend the night in jail to learn that you just can't do these things. And unfortunately, it was on my birthday. It was a horrible way to spend my birthday, but never been back since. Now, but there's something very interesting inside there, because there's a professor at Harvard that I follow. I think I've watched every one of his class lectures, and it's Clay Christensen, and he's an incredible business strategist from Harvard. And he always asks his students on the last day of class, he says, how do you find enduring relationships that with your family? How do you do what matters? And how are you going to stay out of jail? And I always thought that was a very interesting thing for someone to say. But the reality is, if you don't understand your core values and you don't have a set of ethics that you run by in life, it's very easy when you are confronted in business, and you will be, with something that could turn in the wrong direction. and very easily land you in jail. If you don't have those core values that you live by and you don't have some ethos around your ethics, it's very, very easy to make that decision because it's short-sighted. It's a way to make some quick profit. It doesn't seem that bad. I'm not sure if I'll get caught. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're sitting in front of the Department of Justice where they've said, nope, you can't do that. And you're going to go to jail for it. And I had a very good friend in the supplement industry who's now, facing 54 months in prison, and he's got a young family. And it's because he made a very bad decision in business to sell supplements that weren't supplements. They were drugs masquerading as supplements, and he could make a lot of money, and he did. And he was flying private jets and living the life, but it caught up to him. And, and I know it sounds a little funny to say that, but I think the reality is, and I think at the core of that, what that means is, understand your ethos around ethics and establish your core values very early on, because everything else in life can change. Your direction, your strategy, your goals, your mission, but your values should never change. You cannot compromise those. And
that's right.
you need to have those. Advice. And I think it took me a long time to establish what my values really, really were.
And they change a little bit too as you get older and you learn more, right? It does kind of pivot just a little bit. Your core purpose in life, it's a little fluid as you move along and you learn more, right? So
absolutely.
So moving forward now, you want to share, you want to give back, you want to teach, you want to help people, set on some boards. And that's also helping, by the way. I'm guessing some of them are voluntary, maybe some of them are paid, but you're basically trying to make sure you give back now as much as possible. But I know you're still young enough because you're a couple of years younger than me, I think 2 or 3 years younger than me. So you're still probably that bug might be in there. You're gonna have an idea. You're gonna be having coffee with a friend. They're gonna be like, we should start this business, and you're gonna be tempted to, and then your wife's gonna be like,
I knew it. I think keeping my brain engaged is key, right? Like I love these conversations, Steve, because they keep my brain engaged. That's important. I don't want to lose that. Also, giving back engages my brain because I'm able to access things that I've learned through life experiences. But I don't know. I leave it open to the universe. And right now I don't have. I'm very good at stating my intentions and writing things out. And in fact, it's actually kind of scary because before I started QuickBox, I wrote out what my next business was going to be before I even knew what it was, by the way.
Wow.
I wrote it out, what it was going to be comprised of. And I hung that on the wall in my wife's office. And it's we look at it and just in awe because it's like, everything except one piece.
It's pretty good.
Really came to light. And so I'm a big believer in stating your intentions. And right now, I truly haven't stated any intentions around business, if you will. And so I don't expect anything to come. But who knows? I mean,
who knows?
If I can get the next 2 kids that are going to start the next Google at DU to present me with a business idea when I'm teaching and say, "Can you help us with this?" You never know.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm okay. I'm fine. I have enough. I don't need more. I'm not. I'm okay. I also am not driven by. I need more. It's. I want to continue to find more fulfillment, and that's what's most important for me right now.
Congratulations on a wonderful career, my friend. Excellent job at QuickBox, and I wish you the best on the teaching. It'd be awesome to just pop into a class that you were teaching and just listen in. So congrats on everything, my friend. Really appreciate you being on the Riderflex podcast.
I thank you, Steve. And again, I appreciate all the content you put out. It's of great value, and I appreciate the services you've provided for us as well as a company through Riderflex. So thank you for the opportunity of being on here today.